"This child needs a real mother," my mother-in-law declared, cradling my 3-hour-old daughter while I lay hemorrhaging on the delivery bed. The custody papers she pulled from her purse were already signed by a judge, her golf buddy, dated 2 weeks before I'd even given birth. But what would happen when she discovered that the hospital she stood in, the nurses she was commanding, and the very walls around us bore my name on the deed? My name is Victoria Blackwood, and I'm about to tell you how I destroyed the woman who tried to steal my child. 6 months earlier, I'd been reviewing acquisition papers in my office when my husband Marcus walked in with that guilty look I'd come to recognize. "Mom wants to be in the delivery room," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She insists." Eleanor Winters didn't request things, she decreed them. For 3 years, I'd endured her campaigns to remake me into her vision of the perfect daughter-in-law. The cooking classes she'd enrolled me in because Marcus needs proper meals. The etiquette lessons she'd gifted for Christmas. The fertility specialists she'd booked without asking when we didn't conceive within her preferred timeline. "Fine," I'd said, not looking up from my papers. Marcus had relaxed, kissing my forehead before leaving. He didn't notice the document I was signing. The finalization of my purchase of St. Mary's Medical Center, the hospital where 3 generations of Winters women had given birth. Where Eleanor served on the board. Where she thought she ruled. The pregnancy had been difficult. Eleanor criticized everything. My prenatal vitamins, generic brands are basically poison. My exercise routine, you'll harm the baby. My decision to keep working, selfish mothers work until delivery. She'd even hired a nutritionist to follow me to restaurants, documenting what I ate. "This baby is the Winters heir," she'd say. "We can't be too careful." The "we" never included me. I was merely the vessel. 2 weeks before my due date, I'd been in a partner meeting when my assistant interrupted. "There's a Judge Morrison here about signing some papers?" My blood had chilled. Judge Morrison was Eleanor's longtime friend. I'd excused myself, finding him in the conference room with documents spread across the table. "Just standard medical directives," he'd said smoothly. "Mrs. Winters wants to ensure the baby's care if anything happens during delivery." I'd smiled, signed where he indicated, and watched him leave. Then I'd called my lawyer. "Get me copies of whatever Eleanor Winters has filed in family court. Today." The documents arrived within hours. A custody petition claiming I was mentally unstable, a danger to my unborn child. Attached were expert opinions from doctors I'd never met, photographs taken out of context, even a psychological evaluation supposedly conducted during my prenatal appointments. She'd been planning this for months. I could have confronted her then. Could have raged at Marcus, demanded he choose sides. Instead, I'd made a different call. "Mr. Yamamoto?" About that hospital acquisition we discussed. St. Mary's Medical Center had been struggling financially for years. The board, Eleanor included, had been desperately seeking buyers. They'd rejected my initial offer 6 months ago, calling it insulting. Now, hemorrhaging money, they were desperate. I offered 20% more than market value, with one condition. Absolute secrecy until the papers were signed. The night before delivery, I'd felt the first contractions while reviewing staff files in my home office. Eleanor had been downstairs, explaining to Marcus why she'd arranged for her personal photographer to document the birth. "This child will want to see how loved she was from the very first moment," she'd cooed. I'd gripped the desk through another contraction, then sent one email to the new head of security at St. Mary's. A man I'd personally hired. A former military MP who understood chain of command. "Mrs. Blackwood will be delivering tomorrow. Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something I'd instituted at all my properties. A complete security lockdown with me as the only authority. I'd never needed it before. Labor had been brutal. 18 hours of Eleanor criticizing the nurses, questioning the doctors, demanding changes to my birth plan. She'd even tried to have Marcus removed at one point, claiming his nervous energy was disturbing her grandchild. Through it all, I'd stayed quiet, breathing through contractions, watching her perform for the photographer she'd smuggled in despite hospital policy. Then came the moment. My daughter, Isabel, perfect and screaming, was placed on my chest for exactly 30 seconds before Eleanor grabbed her. "She needs to be properly examined," she'd announced, though the pediatrician hadn't even arrived yet. That's when she'd said it. "This child needs a real mother." The custody papers materialized from her purse like a magic trick. "I've already filed for emergency custody. The judge agrees you're unfit. Your obsession with work, your mental instability, the way you've isolated Marcus from his family. It's all documented." The nurses froze. Marcus stared at his mother in shock. The photographer kept shooting. I pressed the call button 3 times, the executive code. "Send the chief of staff to the owner's suite," I said calmly. "Tell him Mrs. Blackwood needs him. Now." Eleanor laughed. "The owner? Darling, I know the DeWitts who own this hospital. We summer together in the Hamptons." "They won't. The DeWitts sold the hospital 2 weeks ago," Dr. Harrison said from the doorway. He was flanked by security, holding an iPad with the hospital's new ownership documents. "To Blackwood Medical Holdings. Mrs. Victoria Blackwood is our new owner and CEO." The room went silent except for Isabel's cries. "Security," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "Please escort Mrs. Winters from the premises. She's no longer permitted on hospital property." "You can't," Eleanor started. "Actually, I can. This is private property. You're trespassing." I held out my arms. "My daughter, please." Eleanor clutched Isabel tighter. "Marcus, do something." Marcus looked between his mother and me, then walked over and gently took our daughter from Eleanor's arms. He placed Isabel on my chest, then turned to his mother. "You tried to steal our child," he said, voice hollow. "You had custody papers drawn up before she was even born. I was protecting her. From her." Eleanor pointed at me. "She's not one of us. She'll never be good enough." "Enough!" Marcus rarely raised his voice. The room flinched. "Get out. Don't come back." Security stepped forward. Eleanor backed away, her perfect composure finally cracking. "That's my grandchild. You can't keep her from me. I'll sue." "I'll. With what judge?" I asked quietly. "Morrison? He's being investigated for the bribes you paid him." "Oh yes, I have the bank records." "Dr. Patel? Lost his license yesterday for writing false psychological evaluations." "That photographer you snuck in? He's actually a private investigator I hired. Every moment of this has been documented." Her face went white. "You've been planning this for months," I continued, holding Isabel closer. "But I've been planning longer. Every doctor you bribed, every document you forged, every lie you told. I have it all. My lawyers are filing charges for attempted kidnapping, fraud, bribing a public official, and conspiracy. Your country club membership, your charity board positions, that summer house in the Hamptons. You'll be liquidating everything for legal fees." "Marcus," she pleaded. He turned his back on her. Security escorted her out, her designer heels clicking against the floor, her sobs echoing down the hallway. The photographer, my investigator, gave me a small nod, patting his camera. Every second documented Mrs. Blackwood. The room slowly emptied until it was just Marcus, Isabel, and me. He sat on the bed's edge, tears streaming down his face. "How long have you known?" he asked. 2 weeks. When Morrison showed up at my office. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at our daughter, perfect and safe in my arms. "Would you have believed me? Your mother, the woman who raised you, planning something this evil." He was quiet for a long moment. "No, I wouldn't have. I needed proof. Undeniable, legally admissible proof." "The hospital, you bought it just for this?" "I bought it because it was a good investment. The fact that it gave me power over your mother was a bonus." I touched his hand. "I'm sorry. I know she's your mother. She tried to steal our baby," he said flatly. "She's nothing to me now." We sat in silence, our daughter between us. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "What happens now?" "Now. She faces charges. She'll probably avoid jail. First offense, elderly, good lawyers. But she'll be destroyed socially, financially. No one will trust her again. And us." I looked at him. Really looked at him. "That depends. Can you live with choosing us over her? Forever?" He didn't hesitate. "I already have." 3 months later, Eleanor Winters took a plea deal. 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, and a permanent restraining order, keeping her 500 feet from Isabel and me. The country club revoked her membership. The charity boards quietly requested her resignation. The summer house was sold to pay legal fees. Marcus and I started therapy, individual and couples. It wasn't easy. 3 years of his mother's manipulation had left deep wounds in our marriage. But slowly we healed. The hospital? It became the cornerstone of my medical empire. We implemented new security protocols, better protection for new mothers, and a legal aid program for women facing custody battles. Eleanor's friends tried to visit once, demanding to know how I could destroy such a pillar of the community. I showed them the custody papers she'd filed, the forged medical documents, the judges she'd bribed. She tried to steal my child, I said simply. I just protected what was mine. They never came back. Sometimes late at night, I hold Isabel and think about that moment in the delivery room. The moment Eleanor revealed her true self. She'd been so confident, so certain I was powerless. She forgot one crucial thing. A mother's love isn't about blood or social standing or family names. It's about the fierce, primal need to protect your child from anyone who would harm them. Even if that someone is family. Especially then. Marcus found the custody papers she'd hidden in her house. Dozens of them, dating back months. Plans for how she'd raise her baby. Private schools selected. Nannies interviewed. A nursery decorated in her mansion. My name appeared nowhere in her plans. I'd been erased before Isabel was even born. Now Eleanor's the one who's been erased. From our lives, from Isabel's future, from the family she thought she controlled. The last I heard, she was living in a small apartment in Portland, working as a receptionist at a law firm. The partners didn't know who she was, what she'd tried to do. She was just another elderly woman trying to make ends meet. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about protection. It's about ensuring the people who would harm your child never get the chance. As I watch Isabel sleep, safe in her nursery, I know I'd do it all again. By 100 hospitals. Face down 1,000 Eleanor Winters. Because that's what real mothers do. We protect our children. No matter the cost.